Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another video on the channel. Today we have another mock draft. Now this is the last mock draft where we don't know the full draft order, because after the Super Bowl we will know who is picking 31st and who is picking 32nd. We're all praying for the Chiefs to win the Super Bowl, I'm sure, but again, we know 95% of the order, so I think it's good to get into it. It's supposed to be mock draft Monday, but I posted a couple conference championship videos, so I didn't want to like triple post in a day. That just didn't seem right to me. So we're posting this video on Tuesday, getting you guys another mock draft. Before we get into it, don't forget to subscribe if you guys have been enjoying the videos, and comment down below who you would pick in certain spots if I completely fucked up your team for this mock draft. Okay, let's go ahead and get into it. So as I've said previously, and as I'm going to continue to say, I think the Bears' dilemma with Justin Fields and Caleb Williams both available for them isn't much of a dilemma. I think that it should be Caleb Williams without really a second thought. The only scenario where if I was the Bears I would pass up on Caleb Williams is if you interview him, or you do your in-person stuff and you meet him and he is just a complete piece of shit. Like if he's just actually like scum of the earth piece of shit, then I would consider passing on him. Or if he's a Jamarcus Russell guy where he's just lazy and he just doesn't care and he doesn't love football, that is probably a 1% chance that is the case. 99 other percentile, you're taking Caleb Williams here if you're the Chicago Bears. And don't confuse this for me accusing that of Caleb Williams. I absolutely do not think that that's the kind of guy that he is. But if that's the case, then that would be an opportunity to pass on Caleb Williams. But I don't think it is. So Washington at number 2. Now, it's important to note I'm recording this on Tuesday morning. And the reason that's important is because we currently do not know who the head coach is for the Washington Commanders or Seattle Seahawks. Now, it is the presumptive favorite that Ben Johnson is going to go to Washington, and then that would probably mean that Mike Macdonald goes to Seattle, and that will probably inform my decision at 16 as well. So we're going to operate under that philosophy. Now, next week when I do this video, if that changes, I'll adjust accordingly. But as of right now, I'm going to pretend like Ben Johnson is the coach in Washington, and Mike Macdonald's the coach in Seattle. So if you're sitting here at number 2 and you're Washington, part of the reason that Ben Johnson would want to take that job is he'd have his pick at quarterback. Honestly, I think the gap between Drake May and Jayden Daniels is closer than the gap between Drake May and Caleb Williams. That's probably a head-ass take for some of you, and I totally get that. But I still think that the Commanders lean Drake May. I think that Ben Johnson's going to like what he sees. Now, number 3 for the New England Patriots. And I was thinking about this, and in my previous 2 mock drafts, I have given them Jayden Daniels. And I'm really starting to decide, is Jayden Daniels at 3 a little rich? Or are the New England Patriots going to say, we have an opportunity to take a superstar, potentially generational prospect at a different position and bypass, quarterback that's kind of rich? I honestly think that it wouldn't be the worst idea in the world if the New England Patriots drafted Marvin Harrison Jr. Think about the Detroit Lions in 2007, who also didn't have a quarterback, and they had that number 2 overall pick. Obviously, Jamarcus Russell went first overall. The Raiders, we saw how well that went, but the Lions, they took Calvin Johnson, and one of the few good things they did in that era of Detroit Lions football, they took that superstar elite wide receiver, and he was a Hall of Famer. He was awesome. Is quarterback a massive need for the New England Patriots? It absolutely is, and if they love Jayden Daniels, they're probably going to take him at 3, but you also have big holes at receiver, and whatever quarterback you bring in will not have a talented team around him. So maybe if you wait a year to get that superstar quarterback, or maybe you hold out a little bit of hope for Mac Jones. That's kind of hilarious. But maybe if you wait a year to get that quarterback, then you can really have him have really good weapons and guys like Marvin Harrison Jr. So just food for thought. Then you have the Arizona Cardinals sitting here at number 4. Now, this is where I think that they are really pissed off, because obviously they're eyeballing Marvin Harrison. They're thinking quarterbacks are going to go 1, 2, and 3, maybe an offensive tackle in there. But speaking of offensive tackle, I do think that they would still probably prefer an offensive position player. You look at it like this. Brock Bowers is tempting, but they have Trey McBride, who is a really strong tight end. I think Malik Neighbors is a little bit rich at 4. I probably wouldn't take him that high. I think Rome Odunze kind of the same thing. I think if you're the Arizona Cardinals, last year you prioritized your offensive line in the first round. You took Paris Johnson 9th overall. I think you can get another blue chip offensive tackle prospect. I think Joe Alt would be an excellent addition to this Arizona offense, who, again, they got Kyler Murray. Like, they're going to stick with Kyler Murray. So I think that it would be a smart investment to continue to invest into that offensive line. Now for number 5. Now this is an example of what I was just talking about in the beginning of the video where, hey, we don't know who the head coach is. That kind of informs my decision. Well, now we do know who the head coach is for the Los Angeles Chargers. Then it is Jim Harbaugh. Jim Harbaugh was my prediction. I will hang my head on that. But now we have a better understanding, I think, of the draft plan of the Los Angeles Chargers. Jim Harbaugh, everywhere he's went, he's been a physical team. He's been a team that has won the line of scrimmage both on the offensive and defensive side of the ball. So now I'm thinking, okay, maybe we're going to go with a guy who is as much a part of the trenches as he could be in addition to the offense. I think that guy is Brock Bowers. Brock Bowers, he is a tight end that literally can do it all. He can block, he can catch, that's for damn sure. He's fast, and I think Jim Harbaugh will really maximize Brock Bowers' potential by having him not only be a great weapon in the passing game, but also an excellent blocker and a guy that's going to help the Chargers establish the run game as well. I think Brock Bowers is going to be a perfect fit for what Jim Harbaugh is going to try to build in Los Angeles. Okay, number 6, we got the New York Giants on the board. Now, truthfully, I think that it's pretty obvious that they need to go wide receiver here. And lucky for the Giants, there are 2 really good receivers in Malik Nabers and Rome Odunze available. If you're the Giants, I think you really have to decide which, I guess, archetype of receiver that you want, because for my money, there's not a whole lot of difference between Malik Nabers and Rome Odunze. They're both really, really, really good wide receiver prospects. They both do different things differently. Like, I think Malik Nabers is probably a better deep threat. He's probably a better yards after catch guy. But with Rome Odunze, you're getting a bigger body wide receiver, a guy that can go high point the football, make those contested catches really well. I think both are also really good route runners. So it's kind of your pick of the litter. I would personally think that a guy like Brian Daboll would want a player of Malik Nabers' caliber, just because of his big play ability, just because of his like home run hitting ability. I think that would be a better fit for what he wants to do. Now, again, I don't necessarily know. I think if we look at the background of Brian Daboll, obviously he was in Buffalo as the QB coach, but he was also in Alabama. He was in Alabama during the time that they had guys like Devontae Smith and Henry Ruggs and Jerry Jeudy, and there's another one I'm missing. I can't. Jalen Waddle. Those guys were, not so big like Rome Odunze is, but they were home run hitters. They could, score a touchdown on every play. I think that's a lot of the caliber of what Malik Nabers is. He reminds me of more so of those guys that he had at Alabama. All right, Tennessee. Now, I think Tennessee, honestly, is in a position right here where if they're at 7 and Rome Odunze is available, I think that they would take Rome Odunze because they need help at receiver. Now, again, with a new coach, Brian Callahan, he's an offensive guy. He's coming from Cincinnati where they had 2, if not 3, really good receivers, right? I mean, 2 elite receivers, I would say, in Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. I think he realizes the power of wide receivers more than probably a lot of people. And Rome Odunze is a stud. I just talked about how good he is. I think the Giants and the Titans would be super happy to get their hands on one of them. And he's going to help this Tennessee offense, which lacks juice. I mean, let's just be real. They lack juice, and this is going to be a good evaluation of Will Levis to get him a good wide receiver. That's what the Bears did last year with DJ Moore, even though they still don't have an answer according to some people. But that's my thought there. Okay, now we've got the Atlanta Falcons. I do think that the Atlanta Falcons could use corner. Cooper DeJean would be a good get here. I'm trying to convince myself of anybody else, though, other than Jaden Daniels. Truthfully, I think if he's there, that would be an absolute steal for the Falcons. Because if you look at some of the other teams, if New England passes on him, he's kind of going to slide a little bit because Arizona's not taking a quarterback. The Chargers aren't taking a quarterback. The Giants might, and the Titans might, but I kind of doubt it because they have younger guys, especially the Giants. Daniel Jones is still under extension. So the Falcons, if they had the opportunity to take Jaden Daniels, I think they do so. Again, that would give them a legitimately exciting prospect at the quarterback position, something that they haven't had for quite a while. Okay, for the Chicago Bears, you got, obviously you just got Caleb Williams. Now I think that you want to go to offensive skill position players. The problem is that a lot of those guys just went. So we have to scroll down a decent amount to see our next offensive skill position player, which would be Brian Thomas, way too rich to take at number 9. So what I think you do instead is you look at your team and you say, okay, did Jalen Johnson leave in free agency? If yes, I think Cooper DeJean is a good option. If no, then I think what you do is you prioritize the interior of the defensive line. I think Jerzon Newton would be a great get for the Bears. Maybe a little rich at 9, I will admit, but it fills a massive need. And again, if you have him up the middle, you have Montez Sweat on the outside with the DBs playing the way that they have been. Hopefully, Jalen Johnson comes back. Then I think this defense could legitimately be really good. And if you just got your quarterback in Caleb Williams, you're set up for a lot of years in Chicago, which is something that they're not used to saying. I think the Titans right here. I'm sorry, not the Titans. I think the Jets right here at number 10 are absolutely just like cheesing ear to ear because they fell into the lap of Olu Fashanu, or rather, Olu Fashanu fell into their lap. I think offensive tackle is going to be the main emphasis point for the Jets, probably throughout the whole offseason, but definitely during the draft, especially with their top 10 pick. I think that once they get to 10, it is best offensive lineman available. And I truthfully think that their number one priority has to be to protect Aaron Rodgers. Number 11, Minnesota Vikings. Now, I think that this is where we see every quarterback not named Jaden Daniels. This is where we start to get the watch. Now, who do they like the most? Do they like Bo Nix? Do they like Michael Penix? Do they like J.J. McCarthy? Again, this obviously depends on if Kirk Cousins re-signs at free agency. I honestly would assume that he would. I do think that Kirk Cousins would probably re-sign with the Vikings, but you never know. So I'm going to operate under that logic for just a second here. Let's go and think of their other needs. So I thought that their defensive backfield got better last year, but it's still not very good. And especially when you're going to run that heavy blitz scheme from Brian Flores, I think you want really, really good athletic corners. I think Cooper DeJean right here would be an excellent get from the Minnesota Vikings. Would give them, more playable corners to allow that defense to thrive. I think that would be really, really good. The Denver Broncos at number 12. Again, I think that we can look at, edge rushers here. There's a lot of good edges. Dallas Turner, Jared Verse, Latu from UCLA. There's a lot of good edge rushers available, but I think if you're Sean Payton and you don't have a plan at quarterback right now because they're going to cut Russell Wilson, if you're Sean Payton, you understand that you need a quarterback, and I think that take your pick. Sean Payton has liked the good athletes. He has liked the guys who can move around a little bit. So I think Bo Nix at 12 is probably his pick of the litter between Nix, McCarthy, Penix, whoever else you want to pick. I think that would be his pick. And again, quarterback is probably a big priority for the Broncos this year. Number 13, the Las Vegas Raiders, who now get to see their regional rival and their actual rival play each other in the Super Bowl in their stadium. Gotta love being a Raiders fan. But they need quarterback. They need running backs, offensive lineman, defensive lineman. I don't know if they would go with the quarterback here at 13. I just don't think so. You have to think of the identity of their coach. Their coach is a defensive guy. He's a former linebacker. I think he is going to prioritize defense. And truthfully, didn't really work out with Terry Wilson. It's not. We're not giving up on the experiment just yet. Him and Max Crosby were supposed to be, dominant, and it hasn't been the case. Yeah, Max Crosby's been great, obviously, still. But, again, I think that they're going to lean defense. I think Nate Wiggins is a guy who is going to be an absolute stud at corner because they're not very talented in their defensive backfield, in my opinion. And, I've said this before, and I'll say it again. The Raiders historically love the freaks, right? They love the guys that are super fast, that jump super high. Well, Nate Wiggins' arms are super long. And we're seeing a trend in the NFL where corners who are tall and have long arms are pretty successful, right? Tariq Woolen is tall and fast and has long arms. Pete Carroll loves that guy. He was, I think, not that he was the guy that really, founded that idea, but he was the guy that popularized it because Sherman had long arms, Brandon Browner, Brian Maxwell, all those guys had long arms back in the day. All right, I'm done with my Legion of Boom rant. New Orleans Saints, I think that we are strictly on best player available watch. And I think that if you're looking at the board the way it is right now, they do need offensive tackle. I do believe because I don't think that, what's his name, Trevor Penning, I don't think that he's very good. I think Talise Fuaga is probably their best bet. Again, they're in such a shit position with their cap and with their team and the way it's structured. I think that your best hope is just to go best player available and hope that you hit a home run. Indianapolis Colts. Now, I would be tempted to give them a wide receiver, but I do think that they could re-sign Michael Pittman and potentially even bring in another guy, maybe like a Darnell Mooney, maybe a DJ Chark, whatever. So I don't think wide receiver is like an immediate need. I do think that if they're looking at the board right here, they do need help with defensive line, and I think what better guy to pair with DeForest Buckner than one of these top two edge rushers. Now, really, take your pick. I would probably lean Dallas Turner a little bit. I think his ceiling is a lot higher. So I would give Dallas Turner to the Indianapolis Colts there. Let's go with the Seattle Seahawks at 16. My team. I'm the most knowledgeable about this, right? Operating under the assumption that we do get Mike Macdonald. Again, that's a defensive coach. So it bodes well that we are going to lean defense in the draft. Especially at 16. And I don't think that is a bad idea at all. I do think that we need help on the defensive side of the ball. Now, there are a lot of free agents for the Seattle Seahawks. The one most notable, in my opinion, is Leonard Williams. And Leonard Williams was awesome last year after the trade, even though the Seahawks as a whole got worse when he came. That's just hilarious. But I think if you have him up the middle, you could have Boye Mafe on the side of the defensive line, and then you could have Jared Verse as well. I think that that's a actually really good defensive line, and you know that Mike Macdonald is going to make that unit as good as humanly possible to match their skill set. So I'd be really excited to see the Seahawks defense in this scenario. Let's go to the Jacksonville Jaguars, who, I mean, they have a few holes. I think Latu would be a decent option here because I do think they need help with their pass rush, especially because Josh Allen, the edge rusher, is a free agent. And they're probably going to pay him a boatload of money. So I'm not going to pick Latu yet because I would still operate under the assumption that they have their number one overall pick, Trayvon Walker, and they have their superstar edge rusher paid handsomely on the other side. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to give them help in the defensive backfield. I'm going to give them Terrion Arnold, corner from Alabama. Now, I probably prefer Kool-Aid McKinstry, but I know that's not the general draft consensus. I'm very curious to see how the combine affects a lot of these guys and how they move up or down. Again, if I was a GM, I'd probably pick Kool-Aid McKinstry higher. I think that his ceiling is a little bit better, but that doesn't seem to be the consensus. So I'm not going to, completely interject my opinion into my mock draft. Number 18, the Cincinnati Bengals, they need offensive tackles. J.C. Latham is the perfect get for them right here because Orlando Brown has not worked out. La'el Collins in free agency definitely did not work out. They, for 3 years, have had the priority of protecting Joe Burrow, and so far they've been unable to accomplish that goal. J.C. Latham, I think, is a really, really good pass protector, which is obviously something the Bengals are going to do as long as they have Joe Burrow. They're going to be a passing team. And I think that this fit is just perfect. If they're sitting at 18 and J.C. Latham is still on the board, I think that they are very, very happy. Number 19, Los Angeles Rams. We're not on best player available watch because the Rams are a good team, but the Rams, I think, were very much elevated by their coaching this year. I don't think that the Rams were a super good roster, but they just had phenomenal coaching from Sean McVay. Raheem Morris did a fantastic job as a defensive coordinator, but now Raheem Morris is gone. And, the offense, Matthew Stafford's not getting younger. He's not getting healthier. I hope he is, but, he's getting beat up every week, it seems like. So there are some options here. Would I be absolutely jaw on the floor stunned if they decide to go with, like, Michael Penix or if Sean McVay likes him, J.J. McCarthy? No. I think quarterback, a bridge option at quarterback. Or I'm sorry, Matthew Stafford to be the starter for the next 2 years and the guy to sit down for a couple years. I think that that's an option for sure, like a Jordan Love situation. But I think that this is a team that made the playoffs. They lost by a point. They think that they can go far. I'm going to probably give them best player available right here. And that to me is Latu out of keep him, out of UCLA. Keep him in the backyard. Keep him in the state of California. They need some good exterior edge rushers. Obviously, Aaron Donald is good, but Aaron Donald's also not getting any younger. So just continue to improve that pass rush. Pittsburgh Steelers. I think that this is a fantastic get for the Steelers. Kool-Aid McKinstry, I just talked about it. I really, really like. I love his athleticism. I think he needs to be a little bit more disciplined, but I love him as an athlete. I mean, they had him, returning kicks. He's that guy. I think that he would pair very nicely with Joey Porter Jr., and the Steelers all of a sudden have a very dangerous young corner room. Miami Dolphins. I personally think that they got to go offensive line here. They have to protect Tua. He's shown to be not able to create big plays when the pocket breaks down. So I think offensive line is a big priority. Amaris Mims out of Georgia. I think that this is the guy who can maybe slide into play guard for a little bit, or maybe fill in when Teron Armstead gets hurt, or maybe when the right tackle gets hurt. I think that this would be a good get for the Miami Dolphins. Let's go to the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, in my last mock draft, I took Brian Thomas Jr., and I was kind of roasted for that because they were like, why are they picking wide receiver 3? And my logic was, hey, in the playoff game, A.J. Brown didn't play, and they looked like they only had one viable receiver on the field, and that was Devontae Smith. I still agree with that. However, I do understand the, withdrawal to take a receiver when the Eagles obviously have more needs, right? They have a big need at linebacker. There's not a linebacker worth taking at 22, so I'm not mad at myself for not taking a linebacker the first time. But at defensive back, I do think that there are talented players to take. They need corners. They need corners badly. James Bradbury is awful. Darius Slay is, 32 years old, and they're relying a little too heavily on a fourth-rounder in Keely Ringo, Josh Jobe, and some of those other guys. I think their safeties are okay, not even close to a strength, but they're, passable for maybe a year. But I think corners is a desperate need. I think the best corner available would be Enos Rakashaw Jr. Again, just really got to make that corner room a lot better. Houston Texans sitting at 23. You guys had a great season. Did a lot better than a lot of people were expecting. Now, sitting at 23, you do have some holes. I think you have more holes on the defensive side of the football. And again, with DeMeco Ryans being a defensive coach, I would imagine that he does go defense here. You need defensive line, I think. I think another compliment to Will Anderson would be his buddy from Alabama, Chris Braswell. I think an edge rusher to pair alongside of him, because Jonathan Greenard, if I'm not mistaken, is a free agent. But the Houston Texans, they do have some options at 23. I'm not totally certain that they'll go Chris Braswell, but I don't think that would be a bad pick either. Number 24, Dallas Cowboys. Now, I have a sneaky feeling that the Dallas Cowboys are going to just take a receiver. And the reason I say that is because CeeDee Lamb is awesome, right? But the way Jerry Jones operates, I just feel like he always wants to just, hit that home run, hit that offensive playmaker that is just amazing, right? I think Brian Thomas Jr. Is a decent pick for the Cowboys here. Now, do they necessarily need wide receiver? No. But I think to have a good complement to CeeDee Lamb would make this offense better. And again, I think that they're struggling in the running game right now. I would have them later in the draft 100% taking a running back. I think that, that's a really big need for the Cowboys right now. But take a receiver, and that's not something I would do. That is purely I think Jerry Jones is going to do this move. Let's go to number 25, Green Bay Packers. Again, went way farther than a lot of people thought. I think personally, Jordan Morgan, if he's on the board here, they would take him. A good tackle. The Packers do need a tackle. Their offensive line has been really decimated by injuries. I would imagine that at some point in the near future, we see a retirement from David Bakhtiari. Unfortunately, injuries just really caught up with him. But they will need his replacement eventually. And I think Jordan Morgan is that guy. He's that guy. Anyway, number 26, Tampa Bay Buccaneers. This is dependent on if Baker Mayfield stays or if he goes. I would imagine he stays, but with his buddy, Dave Canales, his guy, leaving for Carolina, which is ironic because that's where Baker just came from. I don't know. I don't know if Baker stays. I don't know if he would. I think part of the reason he would have stayed would be to stay with Dave Canales, and obviously now he's in Carolina. So I don't know. I'm gonna pretend though in this scenario that Baker is still a Tampa. He's signed as a Buccaneer during the draft. So now we look and we say, okay, what do we need? I think Braylon Trice is a good pick for the Buccaneers here. I didn't mean to do that. Excuse me. Braylon Trice, edge rusher. They need a pass rush, right? Their pass rush a couple years ago when they won the Super Bowl was elite, and it has not been so good. Now they still have really good linebackers. They still have good corners, I would say. I like Carlton Davis and Jamal Dean. But I think they do need to improve the pass rush a little bit. Circling back to the Arizona Cardinals now, as it happened in the beginning, I did take a tackle in Joe Alt. Now, there are still some good wide receivers available. Obviously, he's no Marvin Harrison, but I think Troy Franklin is a good big play threat. He's a guy that can make stuff happen, and if he gets the chemistry going with Kyler Murray, I think that they could be pretty good. Buffalo Bills, I'm thinking that they also want wide receivers, and there is one guy that I have my eyes on that I think is really good. I don't know why he's ranked this low. I think that he's way better than that, but I think the Bills are going to have to go with wide receiver. Gabe Davis is a free agent. Stephon Diggs has, I don't want to say fallen off completely, but I think you noticed during the second half of last season that he wasn't the typical dominant Stephon Diggs that he has been. If you're the Buffalo Bills, I would go with A.D. Mitchell out of Texas. I think he's a stud. I personally have him as a first rounder. I think he's going to go in the first round. I think he's going to run really well at the combine, and I think that that's where he's going to go. Detroit Lions, they need help with their defensive backfield. They do. And they need corners like Kendall Vildor. The fact that their season basically ended because Kendall Vildor doinked a pass off his face mask into the hands of Brandon Ayuk for 50 yards. It's just fucking embarrassing, right? You need to go corner. I think the best corner available is Kamari Lassiter. He's been really solid at Georgia. Obviously comes from that blue blood program. He's been coached really well by Kirby Smart. I think that he's an immediate upgrade. He's a day one starter for the Lions at corner, and they address a position that they need badly. Okay. So, I will be honest. In previous mock drafts, I have not known what to do with the Baltimore Ravens. Now, I've talked to my boy Makana, TTB Ravens. You guys have seen him on the channel. He's the GOAT. And I basically said, hey, what the fuck do they do? He said they would go offensive tackle if there's a good one available. And just by, perusing at my board here, I do think that Troy Fautanu fits that description. And then he said, hey, if none of the good first-round caliber tackles are there, he would probably either go with receiver or best player available. Now, if, Troy Fautanu had been taken, I would probably say that they go maybe with a Ladd McConkey, maybe with again, I just took A.D. Mitchell, maybe not A.D. Mitchell. But for purposes of this mock draft specifically, I will take Troy Fautanu, the tackle out of Washington. Ronnie Stanley might not be on the team next year, and Morgan Moses was kind of a liability in the playoff game. In the AFC Championship game, I think offensive tackle is a need for the Ravens. Not a huge one, not a glaring need, but it is close to becoming that. It is a need that they want to address sooner rather than later, and I would pick that, right? The Chiefs, I think that it's pretty easy analysis to say that they're going to go with receiver. Ladd McConkey is the best receiver available. He's he does a lot of things well. He doesn't do anything super well, but he's just a solid wide receiver, and that is massive for what they have right now. Now, you can argue if the 49ers or Chiefs are going to win the Super Bowl. I really don't think that these two picks matter in the sense of who's taking. I don't think the Chiefs are going to steal the Niners player and vice versa. I think that Ladd McConkey would be the pick at 32, and then this guy would be at 31 as well. But if you're the 49ers, I personally would probably go with I don't know. This is tough. I would probably say there's two options here. You can either address corner or you can address defensive line, because their defensive line is obviously really good, but they've made a habit of making it better over the years. Javon Hargrave hasn't been great. Chase Young has not been good at all. I don't think that there's a corner worth taking this high, so I do think that they might go with Byron Murphy out of Texas. This is my mock draft. Let me know what you guys thought in the comments down below. I'll talk to you guys in a later video. Oh, get this shit out my screen. I will talk to you guys in a later video. Peace out, everybody.